Now we're on Daf Yud Gimel Amid Beis. And the Gemara is trying to explain why Rav Papa, in interpreting Rav, rejected the interpretation of Rav Zvid that we're talking about a case of Maimed Shloshta. And the Gemara answers, Kasav Rav Papa, Ki Amar Rav, Loshna b'milveh v'loshna b'pikadon. That Rav's halacha of Haknas Chaver b'Maimed Shloshtan applies not only to a pikadon, which is a be'en that's being held in the hands of the nifkad, but even to a milveh. And the most, we have a principle in halva that most matana lo tzaditna. So there's no actual most that are now being transferred through Maimed Shloshtan from the love over to the makabel. But nevertheless, Rav says, even in a case of milva, even though there's only a chov, you can transfer that chov over to that third party through Maimed Shloshtan, according to Rav. Now, in the case of a milva, the most are not available. I mean, they're gone already. There's only a chov left. So how much more so in the case of a mana when it's not svuros, certainly that's no worse than the case of a chov, of an abstract milva. And therefore, Maimed Shloshtan would operate and be valid even in Einom Tzvuros, and therefore a pop had to find a different interpretation of our Mishnah according to Rav, and that is Matnas Shchibnir. In fact, the Gemara of Rav Zvid, my time alone, Rav Papa, why couldn't he interpret that Mishnah is talking about a Matnas Shchibnir? Says the Gemara, Rav Zvid holds Lo mitukma masnisim b'shchibnir. It's impossible to interpret our Mishnah as referring to Shchibnir. Why, Mimai? Because Midik Tani, it says in our Mishnah, Omer Tnu get zeli ishti, ushtashikru zeli avdi umeis, lo yitno lachar misa. Let's be medayik in the Lashon HaMishnah. Time of the mess. The reason why the get cannot be delivered and be effective after the death of the Baal is because he died. And therefore the get will not be given to the Isha or the Shtashikra, to the Eved. Hamichayim. If, on the other hand, the Mishaleach, the Baal, is still alive and well, nosnin, we're allowed to give the get because the Baal declared Tnu get zeli ishti. If he only said Kisvu get li ishti or Kisvu shtar shikr li avdi, then apparently ain't nosnin. We cannot deliver the get. And that's not true in the case of Shchimira, argues Rav Zvid, based on one sheet of Tanoim that we're going to see soon. The Shchimira afal gavdalo omar tnu, all the Shchimira said was kiss we get to ishti, and he's very torud, and therefore he didn't add the words tnu. Anyone who hears his command of kisvu is nosnim, he can deliver the get. He's a shliach habal. Even though the Baal, in this case the Shchimera, did not say the word Tnu. So you cannot interpret our Mishnah as referring to Shchimera because our Mishnah requires Tnu to the exclusion of Kisvu. And now we're going to see that Shita Tanoim, which is Reb Shimon Shizuri, in a Mishnah later on Daf Samachay and Beis Nisnan, where Rishona you Omrim Ayotze Bekola, a person who's being taken out, Nebuch, he was condemned to death. And he doesn't want his wife to fall for Yibum because maybe the Yavam is somewhere on the other side of the world, or maybe he's not interested in doing Chalitza. So he needs to get a get to his wife. But V'Amar, all he said was Kisvu get liishti. Those are his last three words before he perished. Is Harelu Yichtavu V'Yitna. We're going to assume that for sure he had in mind Kisvu Tnu. The only reason he didn't say the word Tnu is because he was so torud in his terrible situation. He was so overwhelmed by fear that he's about to be killed. Therefore, he forgot to finish up his words by saying Utnu. The Chacham added another takana, And they said, not only is somebody told me Misa Krova, but even if he's out there on the ship, or he's Yotze B'derech LeMidbar, and as he's going out on the ship or out on this, camel's trip out to the desert, he says, Kisvu Getli Ishti, and he did not add the word Tnu, is anyone who heard the declaration of the Baal when he said Kisvu is allowed to become a shliach and deliver the gerushin. And even a Yotze L'derech, because of the danger involved in going out in the desert, it's like the person who's Yotze B'koler is being taken out to the death, he's tarud. And we can assume, therefore, that as a result of tirda, he didn't complete his words and say Tnu. Rav Shimon Shizuri Omer, he adds Af HaMesukar, meaning a Shchimera, who says Kisvu Getli Ishti, and he did not add the word Tnu. We can become his shliach and we can deliver the get to his wife. And here too, we're going to say that the reason why he didn't say Kisvu he didn't say Tnu, is because he was Toru, but he certainly wants to pater her up from Yibum. So according to Rav Shimon Shizuri, we have a proof of Rav Zvid that the Mishnah can't be talking about Shchimera, because the Mishnah says that the Shchimera said Tnu. So it can't be referring to a Shchimera, because the Mishnah would have been more careful and used the word Kisvu. But now we want to raise the following question. Rav Shimon Shizuri was the Tana who added Mesuka, meaning Shchimera. But the Tanakama, although he had this principle of Kisvu in two cases, case number one is Yotze B'kolor, and case number two, in the case of Mefarish V'Yotze B'Shayor, but he did not add a third case of Shchimera. And therefore, Maskef Le Rav Ashi, Uman Neimel under Masnisim Rav Shimon Shizuri. Why should you insist in Rav Zvid's Hochacha that the Mishnah reflects the sheet of Rav Shimon Shizuri, Dilma Rabbanan he, and the Rabbanan hold that a Shchimera, if he says Kisvu Get Liishti, we will not become Shluchim, and we will not deliver the get until he says the word Tnu, meaning Shchimera still has his wits about him. He's now, giving his last will and testament, he's giving out his money, and he knows what to do with the get. He should have said the word Tnu. And if he did not say the word Tnu, then Kisvu is not sufficient. So it's very possible that a Mishnah is talking about a Shchimera, like Rav Papa, but it's reflecting the sheet of the Chachamim and not that of Rav Shimon Shizuri. And he adds here in the footnote that Rav lo rotza lahamid Mishnah ki yechidah. Rav did not want to take the minority view and interpret the Mishnah according to minority view. And therefore the Mishnah could not be like Rav Shimon Shizuri. He's a minority view, a yechidah. Gufa, Amar Rav Huna. Now the Gemara goes back to Maimed Shloshta. Amar Rav, Mandali Biotcho, Taneu Lola Ploni Maimed Shloshtan, Kon Amar Rava. Now Rav is going to make two comments here. One comment is based on his, meaning Rava's own logic, and the other comment is based on what we know as a tradition was the sheet of Rav. And in the first statement of Rava, Rava is going to disagree with Rav based on Rava's own logic. And he says the following, you know what? I can accept Rav, but only partially, with regard to a pikadon. A pikadon is in the hands of the nifkad, and now it makes sense that the Rabbana would make a takana that since the matana is in the hands of the nifkad, it's what we call be'en. And if the Bailam would have wanted to be makne to someone else, that matana could have done so. Therefore, Chachamim made a takana that we don't need that Maisa Kinyan, and the Nesina B'dibur is sufficient. Avol B'milva, here Rava says Rav took it too far. Look, the Makabel one second. The milva is not kayam, right? We said milva lo tzadnit, no. So there's no be'en here in the hands of the lova. And Rava says in that case, since there's no be'en, and the malva doesn't really have any ownership here, it's just an abstract chov, he cannot be makna in any kinyan, even b'maimed shloshtam, to a makabel. But hello, Kim, I'm taking a shvur that Omer Rav afilu b'milva. In other words, Rav is saying, you should know, I'm disagreeing with Rav, because Rav went as far as to say even b'milva. Itmar nami, now we're going to bring a proof that Rav's halacha maimed shloshtam applies even to alva. Omer Shmuel Mishmei de Levi milva li biyadcha. You owe me a halva, you owe me a chov, and you have to pay back this chov. Tnei lo leploni. Instead of paying me back, I want you to pay so and so. I want him to be zocher in that milva, in that chov, and therefore you'll be poreah to him and not to me. And he can do this b'maimed shloshtam if all three are present: the malveh, the lova, and the purpose and the person shani chofetz sheyizka, that I want to be zochen. If they're all together, then kana. So we see that even in the case of milveh, the principle and the takonas chacham of maimed shloshtan operates and is valid to effectuate the kinyan to that person. And the lova will now pay up his chov to that person. The time of why should this kinyan be valid? After all, a kinyan is only chal on something that's be'en. You can't set up a kinyan on a chov. So the question is being asked, Rashi points out, not on pikadon, because pikadon is be'en, but rather on milva. How could there be a kinyan that's chal on most milva, which are not be'en? Omar Meimar, and here Rav Ashi is going to attack a Meimar. Nase ka omerlo b'shas maten mos. Okay, this is a lemafreya kind of halacha. Shabdina loch lididach ulchol diasi machmasach. When the lova receives the halva, and the mos are handed over to the lova, the lova, is mischayev and mishabed himself, not only to you, meaning to the malva, but even to anyone who comes mitamcha and is representing you to collect that chov. So a Meimer is claiming that the das of the lova, of every lova, b'shas halva, is to be mishabed to anyone sheyovo machmas hamalva. And that's the lashon of Nasik Omerlo. Now, he points out in the name of the Rash, but this is not a psychological umdana about every single lova that he has in mind that the malva is going to send somebody else to collect the piron, but rather it's called Lev Bezdin Masna Lev. So at the time of Alva, Bezdin makes this tonight. Amalei Rav Ashi la Meimar Elameyata, if you're correct that it's a chayvus of the lova vis-a-vis anyone who comes to represent the malva, is an hiklin lavishas mos hachinami lo kanu. Rav made an absolute statement that maimed shloshtan operates even in the case of a chov. Now, what happens if that person was not alive at the shas halva? He wasn't born yet. That's called in the lashon hashas noladim. Now, even though Rabbi Meir holds other makna davar shelo b'li olam, but that's only lid davar shebol olam. So you can't be makna something, or you can't be mishabed yourself, or be mischayev yourself to someone who doesn't exist in the world. And yet Rav has validated the principle of maimed shloshtan, even in the case of a nolad, even if the third party that the malva wants to represent him, so to speak, and collect a chov is not in the world. Now, feel Rabbi Meir the Omer makne Adon makne davar shelo b'li olam. Like, let's say, for example, you have peros that haven't yet grown on the tree, or there are fish in the pond that haven't yet been trapped, and you could be makne those peros. Hani mili, that's only lid davar sheyesh lo. You can be makneh to someone else who is in the world. So you have a Oneh, you don't have the chayfetz, it's not boli olam. And here Rabbi Meir's chiddush is that even though the chayfetz doesn't exist yet, if it's shchiche, and we, have reason to believe that the pears will grow on the trees, you could be makneh to so-and-so, but that so-and-so has to be alive and well. But le avol davar, I know the word davar is a little strange here, but davar means lemi she'ena ba'olam, but to be makneh something to somebody who doesn't exist, lo, Rabbi Meir never said it. And therefore, when you're being makneh the chov to someone who, at the time of the Matan Mos, doesn't exist in the world, then the lova can't be mishabed himself to a non-born yilud. And Rav, again, as we said before, did not make any distinction between hikna l'misha kayim ba'olam or hikna l'misha lo who nolad v'lo haya kayim ba'olam v'shas halva. So you see that this kinyan operates even when he was makneh to someone who is a nolad after the shas halva. After shas halva, he wasn't alive. So how can you say that Ma'amad Shloshin operates midin his chayvus v'ishtabdus shel alove? He can't be mishtabed himself to someone who doesn't exist in the world. Elam Rav Ashi reinterprets the modus vivendi, the operational mechanism of Ma'amad Shloshtam. And here we'll turn to Daf Yud Daled. Vahi hanodeka mishtanyole bein milva yishana lebilva chadosha gomer u'makni nafsh. What happens is that the lova received the halva, let's say, a year ago. And the condition was that at the end of the year, he would return the money that he received as halva. But now, the malva jumps in and he says, you know what, don't pay me, pay so-and-so. And he did this by Ma'amad Shloshtam. So now it becomes a milva chadosha, which means that now the third party here is not going to come and demand piron of the chov immediately, meaning he just was appointed, so to speak, and given the privilege to collect that chov. So he's going to give the lova a certain amount of free time, an extension. That means he doesn't have to be porei the chov immediately. And that's a tremendous hana for the lova, because the lova in the meantime is using the money, he's invested it, he doesn't want to have to pay up. And now as a result of the Ma'amad Shloshtam, he's given an extension. It's therefore gomer u'makni nafshe. He was maskim b'daito, and when the malva says to him b'ma'amad shloshtam, be meshabed yourself to so and so, he has a leiv sholem. He has a complete gemiras das that this makabel matana should stand in place of the malva rishon, and he's meshabed himself to him because of the kinyan of hana, the hana that he gets because it becomes a milva chadosh. He writes here in the footnote, "Alove mischayev michadash lelokeh." There's a new hischayvus on the part of the lova to this person who receives the chol. And this chayvus is chal midin Ma'amad Shloshtam, even without a ma'aseh kinyan, through the gemiras das of hahi hana. Okay, then, so this is where we're going to stop for today. And Mirz Hashem, tomorrow we'll pick it up, Omalei Rafuna. Okay, then, so let me wish you a great day. Thank you so much.